Hello and welcome to the third EPAC Leadership Series. My name is Nair Miller. I'm the Assistant Athletic Director at Montgomery County Community College. Today we are halfway through our EPAC Leadership Series, which is a total of 6 discussions that bring together student athletes, coaches, and athletic administrators. Today's conversation focuses on mental and physical health. Both physical and mental health are a product of our social, economic, and environmental conditions. Our minds, just like our bodies, are shaped by different factors. Right now, as student athletes who are dealing with factors such as having to learn virtually, the election, dealing with COVID, let alone the stressors of everyday life. All these things affect us in some way. And if we are not aware, it can be very easy to lose ourselves and not take care of our own well-being. Today we have Austin Carroll joining us from Delaware County Community College and Dr. Stephen Barron from Montgomery County Community College to help facilitate this important conversation on mental and physical health. Our first speaker tonight is Austin Carroll, who is the Wellness Coordinator at Delaware County Community College. He attended Eastern University and got his degree in exercise science and was a 4-year member of the basketball team. Over the course of his undergraduate studies, his passion for health and wellness grew stronger and propelled him into his current professional career, which has included starting his own health and wellness company, Ace Grind. He is a certified personal trainer and performance enhancement specialist and recently completed his MBA in health administration at Eastern University, where he also serves as assistant coach for the men's basketball program. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Austin, who will get this discussion started.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. And nice to meet everyone virtually as we're all getting so accustomed to. I feel like I don't really need to say anything else as that was a great intro, but I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen and then we'll get into the presentation. But again, thank you all for tuning in and looking forward to talking to you all. Give me 1 second to get this presentation up for us and then we'll get going. And let's present. All right, can you all see my screen? Yes, thumbs up, there we go. Okay, we got action. Well, as you heard, my name is Austin Carroll. I'm the wellness coordinator here for Delaware County Community College, and I will get a little bit deeper into my complete background, but I want to start off by introducing the talk. The talk today is going to be called Find Your Retox, and it's focusing on emotional intelligence and the role that plays on your overall health and well-being. So what I mean, we're going to take a look into my life and my personal experiences as a student athlete, and then my transition into my professional career. I'm going to bring it full circle to give advice to the student athlete back 4 years ago with the information that I know now through my experiences. And hopefully that you all will be able to take something away from this and apply it into your lives now. So here we go. So getting into my background, which you haven't heard yet, I was born and raised in Odenton, Maryland. It's just about 20 minutes south of Baltimore, about 30 minutes north of DC. From a family of 5, as you see, my parents, William and Michelle Carroll, as long as my sisters, Kelly and Tracy Carroll. So I'm the youngest of 5, and I wanted to be like them until I was old enough to make my own decisions, as most of you may know as a youngest child. But one thing that I did know as a young child, I loved sports. I loved the passion just for being outside. And I didn't even understand it was a passion for health and wellness at that point. I just wanted to play basketball 24/7. So basketball quickly dominated my life, as you may know if you play a sport, obviously. So from AAU to high school, it was year-round determination, trying to get to the college level. And that quickly kind of instilled a work ethic in me of just go, grind to get better. You got to earn every position on the court, things like that. So that translated to college. And luckily, I was blessed to be able to go to Eastern University. That's what brought me to Pennsylvania and play 4 years there. So during my time at Eastern University, that passion for sports was mixed with a passion for exercise science, because that's what I was studying. And I knew I wanted to do something business related, whether it was physical therapy or exercise science. So when I graduated, I was able to start my own health and wellness company, Ace Grind Health and Wellness. At the time, it was just kind of like sports training, trying to train all the best athletes and only sports related clients. And then over my 3-year growth period, which we're about to get to next, I learned so much about myself through working with others. And it focused my business more on understanding the importance of mental and physical health and well-being. So we are about to get into my 3, and I want you all to stick with me here because this is a growth timeline that's after my graduation. So as I was going through college, all that I learned through this 3-year growth period, I wish I knew going through college because I would give myself a lot of different advice. So I'm going to give you a look into my life and bring it back full circle to see what I've learned. And hopefully, like I said, you can take something from this. But just so you can follow along with me, in 2017, that's when I graduated college, started my company, Ace Grind, and life was good. I was living on my own out here. I got a full-time job working corporate wellness or corporate fitness, which is just like training at a corporate company, leading group exercise classes. It was my sole responsibility. I was great. I had free time. I was just in a good state. It was a great time. I was learning, enjoying life. And then, of course, things happened abruptly. And as 2018 came, about a year into working at what was one of my favorite jobs, the company that I worked for, a new company bought out that contract. And at that same time, I was trying to decide if I was going to go back to school to pursue my master's. Instead of staying with the new company, I decided to go back to my school and pursue my master's, which is a part-time position, a graduate assistant position. So I'm not getting paid for that position. I'm coaching. I'm doing what I love. I'm being a strength coach. But of course, this is where the honeymoon phase ends and the hustle starts. In order to be a grad student, be a basketball coach, run my business, and pay my bills, I had to hustle. So I was a part-time trainer as well. And I was just grinding. I was still energetic, still young, of course, still letting that work ethic that I knew from sports that was just ingrained into every DNA, every gene in my body, just take over. And I was just going, not looking back, waking up at 6 a.m. to lead lifts for the school, then going to work, then coming back for practice, trying to get my lift in after practice, then doing it all over again. So this is what I call my money motivated stage. And during that 2018 to 2019 year, I didn't even know it yet, but I was just physically and mentally drained. So at the start of 2019, this is my when adulting hits hard phase. From 2019 until when I started working at Delaware County, that's when I realized, okay, maybe I am a little tired. Maybe I am physically, mentally drained. And it took literally a full year of just torturing my body, just going, ignoring that because that's all I knew, for me to realize and just have that one moment of awareness that, wow, I haven't really taken any breaks this year. I haven't given myself any personal time. How am I going to get through this long schedule? I don't really have an opportunity to slow down because I got to support myself. I got to pay my bills. I got to turn my assignments in. As we all know, the concepts carry over to student athletes very easily. But what got me through this year up until I started to work at Delaware County, I briefly learned one step of what my Retox is. And I know you all are probably looking at the word Retox like, what is it? Don't worry, I'm going to explain that a little bit later in the presentation, but you might be able to tie the knot together. So the power of sleep was amazing for me in the beginning of that year, 2019, just to about July, when I first started that process of getting into Delaware County. And what I would do on my long days in between personal training to basketball practice to assignments, I would take like that 5-10 minute nap just briefly in the car to myself, quiet, just to regain my focus before I went to that personal training session or before I went to that practice. And those little 5, 10, 15 minute naps or just sitting in my car peace and quiet worked so many wonders for me that I thought I figured it out. Like I was like, okay, I'm good. Like I can still keep this crazy busy schedule as long as I give myself, 5-10 minutes out of that day, chill, get your nap in, whatever you need to do to keep going. So I was good. Like it was a moment of awareness, but little did I know I was just scratching the surface on how important it was for me to really emphasize a self-care routine in my life. So when I get to Delaware County, I'm still in that that mode of, I figured it out, I'm good. My life is slowed down a little bit from the beginning of that year. I'm adding a little bit more balance into my life and just in a good mind state, finding my self-care routine. And of course, like life always does, it still throws you curveballs when you think you have it figured out. So I'm going to show you this next slide here. So this slide here obviously is a car accident. Yes, that was my car. Now, the irony in this situation, first of all, I'm blessed and thankful that I am here. The irony in this situation is this was a morning that I remember so vividly. I woke up this morning and I knew I had a long day ahead of me. So what I did was I took myself to breakfast by myself before work to my favorite spot. Like things were cool. Like my day was great. I had to go give a presentation on the importance of sleep at one of our branch campuses. So I went over there, gave the presentation on the importance of sleep, emphasizing that in your life. You know, it's okay to have your self-care routine. This is what I'm preaching. On my way back to campus, this is probably about 2:30 in the afternoon. On my way back to the main campus, I make it all the way to campus. And this has never happened to me ever in my life. As I'm pulling in and going up the back roads to campus, somehow I fall asleep at the wheel. So after giving a presentation literally on the importance of sleep and not overworking yourself, the wellness coordinator, the personal trainer, the person who preaches health and wellness falls asleep at the wheel in the middle of the day going back to work. Now, this moment was a huge wake-up call for me, but an amazing lesson. And I'm praying that I'm learning and applying that as much as I can. So I'm going to get to the next slide and talk to you a little bit about that. So what I learned here, most importantly, emphasize your self-care routine because it is normal. You have to understand that maybe that breakfast wasn't enough. Maybe I needed to go to sleep a little bit earlier the day before, or maybe at that point where I realized I was tired on my drive, I could have been emotionally aware enough just to pull over and not think I'm invincible. Think, oh, you know, I've gotten drowsy at the wheel before, but never fallen asleep. Take those little things serious and understand you're not invincible and it's normal for that routine. So be your own teammate, as you see at the bottom. Secondly, and this is something I live by, we do not control, we adapt. All right, so perspective is most important when these unexpected obstacles come in your life, because we literally have our whole lives to stress about things we can't control. As we know with 2020, it's been one of the most uncontrollable years. What we can control is our perspective and our energy and how we deal with that. So in that moment of feeling embarrassed as a wellness coordinator who just fell asleep after giving a presentation on the importance of sleep, my perspective in that moment was, Austin, you're blessed, you're here. What do we need to do next going forward to ensure that you take care of your mental so that this won't happen again? It was one of those situations where I was like, okay, I don't have it all figured out. I might think I'm giving myself enough self-care, but clearly I'm not. So I need to go back to the drawing board, assess that, and keep attacking life how we need to. And then the last one, which could arguably be the most important, knowing the solution doesn't mean solving will be easy. So before I had that accident, that moment that was, you know, eye-opening for me, I thought I had the solution. Oftentimes we think we have our solution. It doesn't mean that road is going to be easy. It doesn't mean that obstacles won't still happen. And it doesn't mean you won't have to go back to the drawing board. So an easy example is when coaches draw up your scouting report for how you play that team, how you're going to approach that game. You might prepare yourself as best as possible, but if a team is hot or if a team is good, you can't control so much. But what you can control is how you respond that next play, how you finish out that game. And then we play every team twice, usually, sometimes more than that. So we go back to the drawing board and try to figure it out next time. Basically, the grind doesn't stop. So now we're going to get into the bulk of how we can do this a little bit more efficiently. So emotional intelligence, or as you see in parentheses, EQ, this is the definition of emotional intelligence. It is emotional quotient is the level of understanding one has regarding their emotions and those of others, along with the ability to manage them. So my definition here is it's simply the ability to look internally, process your emotions to try to understand where they're coming from, and more importantly, understand the best plan of action. Now, this concept applies, and when you're considering others' emotions as well, you should be able to look into someone else and see why they're feeling somewhere, why they're acting somewhere, why maybe maybe they're having a bad day, and then find your best plan of action to handle that solution or to handle that situation. So this is the part where it comes all together. And I put a quote up at the top because it resonates with me personally as a business owner and as someone who preaches self-care, mental wellness, and health and well-being. So this is a quote from the Economic Forum naming emotional intelligence as one of the top skills needed for success in 2020. And when I tell you, all of research has just proven, even since early 1980s, that emotional intelligence is one of the best traits that leaders can possess, whether you're in business, whether you're in sport, and whether you're in life. And I personally think of our lives as a business. So whether you're a student or an actual business owner, when you're running a business, you have to make sure your employees have time for vacation, have time for lunch breaks, have, employee benefit programs, all things that take care of them. When you're running your life, you're finding your career, it's very similar. You're always working towards success. But if you don't find that time in that process to take care of yourself, give yourself that vacation, give yourself that lunch break, then it's almost counterproductive. So I'm going to get into these 5 parts of emotional intelligence and then kind of bring it back to show how, if I would have known what I know now back in college, how I could have handled different situations. So the first step is self-assessment with emotional intelligence. So an example, as an athlete, self-assessment could look like, what are you good at? Understanding what you're good at and how that can help the team. Not necessarily what your best quality is, but understanding, okay, I may be the best defender. Although I think I can shoot, the team needs defense. So I'm going to be that for the team and take my opportunities when shooting comes. Or I'm sorry if I'm in basketball examples, but I'm sure you all would do the same thing. Basketball has been my life, so it's the most easy example to go to. So self-expression kind of goes hand in hand with self-assessment. Once you're able to look internally and figure out those things, then you can express and kind of make that decision. So a good example for me personally, when I was going into my sophomore and junior year, I had a new head coach. And with new head coaches, oftentimes come new players that weren't there from the previous coaching staff. So new players are coming in. We're all trying to figure out how we blend, how we work together. The coach is trying to figure out me as a player, and we don't have a relationship yet. And I'm trying to figure out how to trust him. He's trying to figure out how to trust me so that in turn we can win games. Throughout that process, of course, I had a little bit lower playing time than I may have personally wanted. So we may have all been in situations where you're not getting as much time as you want. I had to look within and find ways within me to bring more things to the table as a player. And then also I had to look to his perspective, where he was coming from, understanding that he's just trying to find that best mix for our team. There's other players that may be just as good or that bring something else to the table. So looking into his perspective and finding my perspective, we were able to have a conversation and get to the goal. So that leads me to part 3, interpersonal communication. So as a teammate, interpersonal communication could look like, if I know I'm a point guard, if I know my 5-man, my center, his best spot is on the wing. I do really well in a ball screen. I know what his strengths are. I know what my strengths are. I can have a conversation with him so that we both put each other in good situations for mutual benefit. Just understanding how to see in others what their strengths are, or maybe just what they're going through that day, may help you take that little pause step before you start that conversation. or before you retaliate to a coworker, or before you retaliate to a coach. It helps you deal with that moment and then leads you to decision making. And the last part is stress management. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to go. Let me go back real quick. The last part is stress management. It all comes together. Stress management is always just perspective in the moment. So with sports, a lot of times on the court or on the field or whatever your sport is, the moment can be very intense if a coach is yelling at you for something that may not even be your fault. Emotional intelligence is understanding that moment, understanding that arguing in that point isn't going to get you anywhere. It's going to lead you into a little bit more of a battle. But you're just going to internalize that, realize that you need to have a conversation with that coach afterwards, or you need to have a conversation with that coworker after that blow up moment, and then have a mutual understand where we need to get and understand what you need to say to grow. So it's basically learning how to be aware in the moment and put it into perspective before retaliation. Also, stress management. As we know, as a student athlete, we have so many different things on our plate. We have to study, we have school, we have jobs, we have family, we have practice. And then on top of all of that, we have to take care of our mental and physical well-being in order to be ready for the next practice. So emotional intelligence helps you deal with understanding that maybe if I have a test the next day and I had a tough practice, you know that instead of staying up and torturing yourself after practice for a late night study session where you may not get anything out of it, you may work better in the morning, waking up early and getting that study session in before that test. I'm giving you a personal example because that's what worked for me. I was emotional intelligent enough to understand that if I have a late night, if I'm trying to study, my body is rejecting it at that time. But if I wake up earlier in the morning, for me personally, that's where I got good energy from. I could lock in and focus. And oftentimes I did better on my tests. Not every time, but oftentimes I did. All right, but as we are closing it out here, I'm finally going to get into, so where do we start today? How do we start today? What does Retox mean? Okay, so Ace Grind's definition of Retox simply focuses on emphasizing and giving your body back what it needs to refresh and recharge to manage the everyday stressors, these unpredictable obstacles. So as you saw with emotional intelligence, the first step to emotional intelligence is that self-assessment. So where do you get your positive energy from? If you're going to take anything or any step towards being emotional intelligent today, we're going to try to find your Retox routine. Personally, my Retox routine, I love quiet time by myself. Obviously, I love sleep. I love good food. I love music. I love socializing with my friends. I love walking in nature. Like, I know all of those things give me positive energy. So when these unpredictable things happen in life, or when my long days happen, now I try to prioritize time and schedule time and block off time in my day to give myself some of those positive energy, some of my Retox routine, so that I may feel better to deal with those everyday stressors. Also, in the moment when things pop up unexpectedly, I also try to use those Retox or that Retox routine as a tool in my toolbox just to deal with overcoming that moment. Because like I said, we have our whole lives to stress about the unexpected and stress about these obstacles. But if in that moment you need to step away and be by yourself, or if you get a bad grade, or if, you know, an obstacle comes up, just taking that moment to be aware, give yourself some positive energy first before you have to sub yourself back into the game of dealing with everything. And the last example I will give here, do you have a people meter? So I personally have a people meter. What a people meter means for me is when I feel myself getting too agitated for little things that just don't make sense, or just, you know, your teammates just getting on your nerves for something that, it's just unnormal. Sometimes I have to look within and be like, all right, have I given myself any of that Retox routine today? maybe my people meter is just on E and I've been around people too much and I just need to be by myself. I need to be in nature, or I need a nap, or oftentimes for me personally, and usually it's I'm hungry. So the example of being hungry and angry oftentimes happens to people. What emotional intelligence does is it helps you realize that in the moment. So when I find myself agitated and I don't know why, being emotional intelligent knows that, okay, I get angry when I'm hungry. Maybe I missed a meal today. Maybe I didn't give myself that lunch break because I just been on go, go, go. Maybe I didn't give myself those nutrients to refresh after a long practice and take care of my body. So I know, because I'm emotional intelligent, I always check that box first. When I find myself agitated, I'm like, all right, did I eat today? Did I sleep today? It's just that simple moment that helps you deal with those situations. I think that's it. So yes, if you take anything away from today, and these are just some events, some Retox events that I do through my company last year, back when we were allowed to kind of be together and in public. But if you take anything away today, I just want you to know that emotional intelligence isn't like guaranteeing you'll win the game or that unpredicted things won't happen. It's more so like being your own teammate and teaching you how and when and why and how you're just going to adapt and deal with these situations of life. Because as you know, the struggle will always continue, whether it's in sport, life, the grind doesn't stop. I'm trying not to be too corny and keep saying grind, but we know like it's a continuous battle to keep going. So what you can do is have more tools in your toolbox to deal with those unpredicted stressors, and starting with self-assessment and prioritizing your health and well-being, giving yourself those things so that you can offset those stressors could be that first step. So I just challenge you today to think, most importantly, of where you get your positive energy from and try to substitute one of those things that may stress you out, which could simply be not being on an eating schedule or staying up too late, and sub it with something that gives you positive energy. So this last slide here is just my contact information. If you all want to stay tuned with what I'm doing, or sometimes I do socially distant events and Zoom webinars and a lot of different things. There's my Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and website. But I am good to go. I will turn it back over to the leader here. But I thank you all for tuning in, and hopefully you have some questions for later.
Yes, thank you, Austin, for that great presentation. Definitely a lot of tools that we can take with us to help kind of navigate the ups and downs of life. So that was great. We are now going to turn it over to our second speaker, Dr. Stephen Barron, who is going to talk about mental and physical health and some of the available resources to you as students. Dr. Stephen Barron is an alumnus of Montgomery County Community College. He is an associate professor of psychology and sociology and has taught at the college since 1992. So he is a member of the World Psychiatric Association Division of Exercise and Sports, and has worked with professional, college, high school, and youth teams. He has served as a sports psychologist as one of our country's Olympic training centers. And in 2012, he also co-authored his first book and had more than 24 articles regarding local, national, and international sport and mental health published. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Barron, and I am going to pull up his slideshow so we can get started here.
Okay, so first of all, Austin, that's wonderful information. That was outstanding. So yeah, I was where a lot of you are. A lot of decades ago, I was an athlete at Montgomery County Community College. And it was a heck of a launching point for me to go from where I was then to where I am now. And I didn't have what you folks have right now. I did not have the opportunity to be involved with the programs such as this. So if I may, from an old person, take every advantage of it. You know, presentations such as Austin provided you are, they're priceless. So hopefully I can match that. So Nair, if we can move on, and I have no idea where you found that slide from. Now I'm a little nervous because I think the word is stalked, but okay. You know, it's important for me that, particularly at this point in time in history, you all understand what healthcare in this country is. Yeah, I'm old. I'm also from a family that has been involved in health, wellness, psychiatry for 125 years. I have a brother who is a provost at a medical school. My son is went to medical school and then got a doctoral degree. Sadly, most of us really don't understand what healthcare is all about. See, in the past, any of you going into nursing or exercise science in any way, medicine, physical therapy, the role you used to play to society was reactive. You were there to fix somebody when they were hurt. So the physical therapist, the athletic trainer, you had an injury, they're there to heal it, to repair it. You're not feeling well, you go to your primary care physician. Today you go to your minute clinic, you see your physician assistant, and they're there to fix it. Well, that's a very, very expensive healthcare system. So whether it was noble or not, we live now in an era of wellness, preventative healthcare. So it's not just going to the doctor for your well checkups. It's the state of Pennsylvania creating the biking and hiking paths. It is, as Austin spoke about, us being more aware of our own responsibilities to our health and our well-being. But something that actually dawned on me as I was listening to Austin, you know, there's something that's also very significant, and that's the shift we've all made to the realization that we have every right to feel well, that we shouldn't have to wait to get sick before the healthcare professionals provide us guidance and direction. So the mere word wellness itself, that's a new one. When I went to Montgo, we didn't talk about wellness because it was really not what the healthcare system is all about. So you look at the definition and you recognize words like lifestyle, promoting wellness. You know, one thing that frustrates me is when you go out on those biking and hiking trails, who do you see? Do you see young people such as yourselves or an old fart like me? Sadly, a lot of old farts out there. And that's the importance of the lifestyle. So yes, things like sleep, absolutely, diet, nutrition beyond just what you eat as far as supplements. And yeah, it is something like school to feed the mind. So the whole idea is to stay well, to stay healthy. And yes, to utilize every possible resource available to do that. And I can't imagine, and I hope that none of us ever have to deal with the situation we're in right now. A pandemic would be enough to finally see the realization of making true social change would be enough in and of itself. But to, on top of that, have the issues going on around us politically, the changes in the economy. I was talking with a student today who had a wonderful discussion with their father, and it was the student trying to share with the father their concerns about, you know, all this time and all this effort I'm putting into school. Will I even get a job? You're a generation who really hasn't even been told what education's really all about. You were just told to go, you were told to get your degree, and then look for a job. That leads to a lot of stress and anxiety because nobody's guaranteeing you anything at the end of the rainbow. So we find ourselves at this incredibly difficult point in time in history, a time that mandates that we drop a lot of the garbage. You know what the garbage is? Fear and anxiety that we're struggling, we're stressful. I'm very fortunate. My wife is a 12-year cancer survivor. I want you to think about something. The day we got that horrible news, sadly, probably many of you have been in the same situation, it was time to call our loved ones and tell everybody the diagnosis. When we did so, what kind of responses did we get? Well, you can assume. We got compassion, love, sympathy. But what would have happened if that day, instead of walking out of an oncologist's office, we walked out of a psychiatrist's office and her diagnosis wasn't cancer, it was bipolar disorder type 2. And now we're calling everybody to tell them that. Well, there's a massive stigma in mental health in this country. And that stigma stands in the way of a lot of people's wellness. You know, we would much rather be seen coming out of a primary care doctor's office than seen coming out of a psychiatrist's office. You know what that means today? It means there's a lot of Americans out there suffering in silence. Well, as I like to say, suffering in silence is still silence. So why do we do it? Because of that stigma, because of that fear. Oh, heaven forbid somebody find out that I'm dealing with anxiety or depression. If I blew my knee out, well, that's kind of cool. Now I'm going to get sympathy. I'm going to get empathy. But right now in this country, we're not dealing with a profound level of musculoskeletal. We're dealing with profound impact on our mental health. So, Nair, if we could tag team on this one, advance to the next slide. Here are some things I want you to think about as far as resources you've got. But you know what? What you're looking at right now doesn't mean anything until you decide that you're worth it, that your life is worth somebody intervening with you. And I would hope no one involved right now. I would hope everyone that's involved right now and everybody you know realizes that their life is worth it. Because, for example, at Montgomery County Community College, that one that says talk space, we provide that free to our students. What good is it if the student says, yeah, but somebody might find out and I'd be embarrassed and I'd be humiliated and I would be bullied online and I just don't want to deal with that. There are more resources out there than you can imagine. But until you value yourself, until you say, you know what, my life can be better. And not just mean better as in lifting more weights or upping your running routine. I mean, my life can be better. I can be happier. I can be calmer. I can feel more in control. So yes, at one level, it is working with mental health professionals. So NAMI, offices in Bucks and Montgomery County, some contact information. As I said, Talkspace, wonderful resource. The good news is, yes, Austin, we're doing a lot of things by Zoom, including mental health intervention. Now, by the way, you ready for this? The equivalent of Talkspace or NAMI online 30 years ago was illegal. I can't imagine, had we gone through this pandemic without the mental health industry realizing that any service you can provide is a worthwhile service, whether by Zoom, text, whatever. But you know what? There are a lot of other people who are a resource for you. Don't rule out your local clergy, somebody you may have known your whole life. I got news for you. A lot of those clergy people have advanced training in mental health. How do I know that? Because, don't tell anybody. The Archdiocese used to hire my older brother to come in and help them become better at dealing with those people who came to them with personal problems and who would say, I will only speak to you. I'm too embarrassed to go to speak to someone else. Kelly, it's a great point that everybody needs to put in that kind of effort. Your schools probably have some form of counseling department, maybe within your athletic department, maybe in general. Don't be afraid. It's all confidential. But you know what? Who cares? Let people find out. And look them in the eye and say, what, you don't care about yourself? I care about myself. You go to a dentist? You go to a doctor? Yeah, I talked to this person. Don't be afraid of also talking to your faculty, because one of your stresses is your classes. You know what's really a shame? It's a shame that there's this huge chasm between the student and their teacher. We look at teachers like they're foreign entities, somebody we should fear, somebody we should hate. You know what? Your teachers have children. Your teachers do goofy things. Don't be afraid of them. If part of your stress right now is what's going on in your classroom, give them a shot. You know what? Many of your faculty have been teaching a long time, and they probably have a lot of tips and strategies that may even go beyond just your time with them in the classroom. Your coaches, yes, as Austin pointed out, get to know them. Where the fact of the matter is, you probably have a closer relationship with them than you do a lot of other people. I can assure you the coaches I've met at Montgomery County Community College are there to be an awful lot more than just somebody involved with performance enhancement in your chosen sport. Family. You know what one of the great things about this awful pandemic is? That's an interesting way. One of the great things about an awful pandemic. We've gotten to know each other again. You know what? I see parents who are saying, I didn't know I had 3 children. Who are you? Where did you come from? Well, I'm 14 years old. I've been around a long time. Don't be afraid. Open a dialogue. Have a conversation. No one is alone. But sometimes we've painted ourselves into such a corner that our mental health is affected by the choices we've made to ostracize ourselves. I got news for you. A Facebook friend is not the same as a friend you grew up with. It was a great choice of words by Zuckerberg to say friend, because everybody wants friends. Your friends, your teammates. You know, someone's going to have to break the ice. You know, it shouldn't be like a game of chicken. Okay, who's going to actually admit first that they're really freaked out by everything going on? Who's going to be the first one to admit that, you know what, I'm feeling really stressed out? You be the first one, right? This is a leadership series. Be a leader. Leaders aren't just people who stand up and yell and scream and boast. Leaders are role models. And right now, we need a lot more role models who are humble and willing to admit that they, probably like you, are maybe not in the greatest place right now. That's leadership. That's strength. And don't underestimate yourselves. All right? Sadly, the way our school system, the way our society structures things, we hear a lot of negative. We hear a lot of criticism. And sometimes it's the best of people who take that to heart. And having taken it to heart, they begin to be afraid that they can rely on themselves. Nah, don't listen to them. If you've had the strength to get to where you are right now, don't minimize how much further that strength can take you. So what do? You reach for whatever level of input you need. This is what we teach nurses when they go out to do their clinical rotations. Match the patients with their level of need. Look, if things are really pushing you, then talk to the professionals. Reach out. Go through Talkspace, NAMI. Uncomfortable with them, clergy, the school counselors. If it is something specific like school, reach out to your teachers. If you're not sure if you're going to make the team, or if you're not sure you're going to be able to make it on a team at a 4-year school, then open a dialogue with your coaches. If you're feeling estranged, reach out to your family. Maybe you can teach them how to communicate. But it all has to start with you. And it has to start with valuing yourself. And I think you've done enough to prove that. So now if we can go to the last. So as Austin said, now leave it up to whatever questions you might have to continue the conversation.
Yeah, so feel free right now. We have Dr. Barron and Austin still on with us, so feel free to use the chat, ask any questions, conversation. Let's keep this conversation going.
If it's okay, I'll chime in on a point made in the chat.
Okay.
I'll read it so we can all hear it. I'll start with the second part of it. I definitely have been dealing with a lot of stress and stuff. I haven't really gotten that close with my family, even though we were basically in the same house. I had talked to some people in my family that I hadn't spoken to in years. I just want to let you know that those feelings are completely normal. I wasn't in the house with my family typically. Like, I'm one of the only people in my family up north The rest of my family is down south. So it was a different situation for me. But I can only imagine when you're around the same people every day or the same teammates every day or whoever, it can easily get stressful. So my only piece of advice, of course, because I do not understand your complete situation, is to, in those times when you may be even just overwhelmed with being around the stress or those same stress, whether your family's bringing you stress or whether it's outside factors, the stress in general, in those times when you have that stress, focus on you a little bit, focus on what you can control, and take a step away from that, just by finding something that you like positively, and try to give yourself that in your life. I hope that was worded well enough to understand.
That's a great point, Austin. And I think, if I may, one of the most important words is, yeah, it's normal. As a matter of fact, it would be kind of abnormal right now through all of this. You didn't have some level of stress. And again, sadly, we're trained to think that there's something wrong with me if I admit that there's something wrong with me. Nah, it's everybody.
Sure. So we have a few more responses in the chat. The first one is, Austin, can you go over the example of sleeping and positive things one more time? And yes, sure. So to give you a better example of what Retox is, just oftentimes we focus too much of our energy on trying to get rid of things or get rid of unhealthy habits or stop eating carbs or, you know, cutting sugar out of your diet. Retox just completely takes a different approach, and it focuses on what you can give yourself. It's stressful to try to control and get rid of and, you know, deal with all those little things that you can't control. But what you can control is giving yourself something healthy that you enjoy. That doesn't have to be vegetables. It could be something as simple as a nap. So for me personally, I enjoy that time of sleeping. That's my form of meditation. And when I say sleeping, I don't always mean it literally, because when I would take those 5-minute sleeping breaks, I wasn't legit sleeping in my car or in my bed or what it was. It was just more so meditation for me. Meditation doesn't have to be sitting in a dark room, crisscross applesauce and humming. It literally could be taking a walk, just taking some time for yourself. So that's what Retox is about. It's understanding what works for you, and prioritizing that in your life.
I think there was a question in the chat or a comment. What would be some tips to open up and talk to someone? It's hard for this individual to open up to people. I think one of the things I can add to that is you can't be afraid to be judged. There is nobody in this world that is perfect. Everybody has their own baggage that comes along with that. And, you know, again, don't be afraid to be judged. So you never know, you know, you look at people like, what's his name that just committed suicide? Not just, but what's the comedian's name? Why am I drawing a blank?
Robin Williams.
There you go. You know, he was all laughs and smiles. Nobody ever knew, you know, what he was going through. So, you know, don't be afraid to, you just don't know with people, you know, and it takes courage to do that, to kind of open up and talk. But that would be my advice.
I love that. I definitely love to weigh in on that, just because personally, and oftentimes I feel like the trend happens in males as well, just because there's a lot of times there's pressure just to, you know, go and do, and for like the stigma of mental health and dealing with those situations, it's not cool to address it. So for me personally, as a male, a lot of times through my life, I ignored my stress. I ignored my struggles. And a lot of times it was more so inadvertently, like not being aware enough to know that I was stressed or to know that I was burning myself out. So that's really the point of, even if you're not opening up to anyone else yet, because that could be a step that comes down later, the first step is knowing that it's completely okay to be stressed out, to have bad days, to have stress, to deal with those things, because it's normal for any and everyone. And for me, it took burning myself out, falling asleep at the wheel, and like negatively impacting my health before I could realize that. So my goal for you all is just, if the first step today is becoming aware and understanding that if you are stressed, if you are depressed, if you are going through struggles, it's okay to show that. Like, and the people that are on this resource panel today are the people that are here to help you when you are ready to speak about it. So the first step is knowing that it's okay to be that way. It's okay to have bad days, because we all do. It's a part of the cycle. And then using these resources that are here and on this resource panel are great first contact points if you want to feel a little bit more comfortable learning to open up.
If I can throw another log in the fire. If your concern is knowing how to talk with somebody, let me get you to think about this. How were you the first day you walked on a court or a field to play? Were you the perfect athlete? Did you have bad games? Did you have practices where you really just weren't developing the skill at the same pace as everybody else? Yeah, of course. But you kept practicing and you get better at it. It's the same thing with communication. Okay? So maybe if you look at it as an athlete, I am going to set a goal for myself. I'm just going to become a better communicator, which means, Kelly, great advice, which means I'm not going to be afraid of what somebody says to me. For myself, I'm going to work on communicating. The being judged thing, well, sadly, my generation did that to your generation. We raised you to be afraid of judgment. You know, we thought it was a great idea to give all of you a participation medal, but we forgot that that's not the real world. In the real world, someone scores more points. Somebody has a faster time. And there's nothing wrong with doing your best. Anything can be better. We can get better at the free throw line. We can get better at finding the corners of the net for a penalty kick. We can get better at communicating. As leaders, yeah, that's what we do. So if you don't go into it looking at it as, wow, and if the first time I sit down to talk to somebody, it doesn't go well, I'll be devastated. Nah, that's your baseline. That's where you're going to grow from. So take the stress off yourself. Use the skills you have as an athlete. By the way, if I may also chime in with the sleep thing, neurologically speaking, there's an explanation why there's such a sleep deprivation issue in this country. I got news for you. Before COVID, the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, Georgia, had a statement that the United States was experiencing a sleep epidemic crisis, and then throw on top of it COVID. See, what happens is we are a very complicated electrochemical machine. Each and every day, your brain naturally dumps chemicals just to help us deal with the stresses and the strains. When you sleep, you actually refill those chemicals. Well, the problem is right now, each day is just draining us so excessively that it makes it hard to sleep. And since we're not sleeping, we don't recharge, and it's this vicious cycle. So again, it's not you. You're not abnormal. This is what a human being is. And our natural biochemical mechanisms are being challenged massively today. There are some things you can do. Turn your stupid phone off. Let your brain shut down. Sleep is nothing more from going from active conscious waking state to not thinking about things. But when you're so engaged with your Twitter account or Instagram, up until the minute you turn your phone off, you're basically saying to your brain, okay, now stop. It doesn't work that way. They call it power down. So if you think you really need to get to sleep at 11:30, shut everything off at 10 o'clock. And then, yes, do some things that are pleasant, enjoyable, and mindless. And then realize, yeah, it's not just me. I'm not abnormal. The sleeping thing, I got news for you. This is why pharmaceutical companies make a lot of money off sleeping aids. And there are a lot of people right now who are feeling really good because they take those sleeping aids and they get a full night's sleep. Again, whatever your level of need is, make sure that's the level of intervention you get. All right, I'll shut up.
Dr. Barron and Austin, we had a question come in from one of our esports coaches. From a coach's perspective, what are some tips that you can give us to encourage discussions about mental health with our student athletes?
Sure. I love this question. And it's something that as coaches, I feel like even just in the last year, we're continuing to work to be better. So I'll just give you an example of things that we're doing this year, just as an assistant coach at Eastern University. I think Dr. Barron mentioned it. We want to be a lot more than just a coach for a performance in that sport. Like that should be our initial goal. So in order to do so, we've set up individual meetings, whether it's Zoom or in person, with each of our athletes outside of basketball, just to understand each individual. And I feel like it starts there, having an individual connection with each athlete, esports, basketball, whatever the sport is, treating that individual as a person outside of their sport first, learning their interests, learning their career goals, breaks that barrier so that they're a little bit more comfortable to then take that second step to address the mental health and mental wellness issues. We have to build relationships with our players first, and this is very transparent as well. Build relationships with that teammate that you may not understand, or that coworker or that boss that you may not understand, before you can break the barrier to talk about those difficult situations or dealing with conflict on the court or in the office. So basically treating each player as an individual outside of their sport first would be the first step that I encourage you to do. And then from there, taking any and every opportunity to highlight the resources that are within your organization and in the local surrounding community, just so they understand it's normal when it's coming from the leader, the coach, to the players, and they see you normalizing it. It can help the athletes, because I know it would help me as a former athlete, understanding what's out there and seeing that as the norm.
I just want to piggyback real quick. Go ahead, Dr. Barron.
Sorry, as our time is running short, how about this for a perspective? Whether your sport involves a controller in your hand, a ball in your hand, a ball at your foot, anything and everything you're going to do starts with your brain, starts with your mind. So as a coach, if we care about having our athletes succeed, we have to first start with making sure that mentally they're in the right place. As I said, I had a great honor to be the sports psychologist at an Olympic training center. You know what I ended up doing more than anything? Therapy. Because you can only go so far as your mind is clear to let your body do what it needs to do. As someone named Csikszentmihalyi talks about the flow state. It's very hard to get into that flow. It's very hard to tune everything else out when you have things weighing down your mind. So honestly, I would suggest it's one of the responsibilities of the coach. That's why a lot of your coaches probably had a sports psychology class getting their undergraduate degrees. It's why it is one of the prominent areas of sport and exercise science, because we as coaches are doing more than training the body. As a matter of fact, everything starts with the mind. So maybe this is one of those things you present to your athletes as saying, now we're going to really kick things up a notch. And we're going to make sure that everybody's in a good place so we can react quicker. We can think on our feet.
So I just wanted to piggyback on a couple things. So those of you who don't know me, my name is Josh Walters. I'm the athletic trainer at Monco. But a couple really great points that I think both Dr. Barron and Austin have noted is relationship building. Especially in terms of that question, Ryan, how do we encourage discussions? Is building the relationship with your athlete, whether it be as a whole team or individually as an athlete or athlete-coach relationship. But at the end of the day, you're not treating them as an athlete, or I shouldn't say treating, but you're not getting to know them as an athlete. You're getting to know them as a person. They just happen to be an athlete. And so I think you really have to build that relationship. And at the end of the day, it's going to be up to them to really disclose anything when it comes to their own mental health. You might poke and poke and poke, and they might be very guarded. But when you have an individual in front of you that's just absolutely at their wit's end and they're distraught, any little thing that happens might actually break that barrier down, and they might just absolutely open the floodgates. And so in terms of having a discussion about mental health, I think being open yourself and being transparent with your athletes that you are somebody that they can come and talk to but then also understanding that you're not the end all be all resource, and that there's a lot of other people. As a coach, you shouldn't be getting them, you shouldn't be the final stop for them in terms of their mental health. They need to go higher than you. So encourage them to seek out their athletic trainer, encourage them to seek out their athletic department staff, the psychologist or counseling center on campus, or a private entity outside. But encouraging them to get the support that they need as an individual, not as a student athlete, but just as an individual. Athletics has a very large role in who they are, most likely, and that can play a big role in their mental health. But you're getting to know them as an athlete. And I think the one thing that it's important for you athletes that are on the call is exactly what Austin said earlier, is that it's okay to feel that way, and it's okay to not be okay, if that makes sense. And I'm sure you guys have all heard that before. But the first step in that is understanding and accepting the fact that it's perfectly fine to not be okay. Nobody is okay 100% of the time. We're all individuals. We're all have crazy amount of stuff going on every single day. I feel like everybody's life is so crazy and hectic right now. And sometimes you just need to take that 5 minutes to just hit the reset button. Austin said, taking these small little, naps, if you will. And, there's various forms of what that nap may mean to you, in terms of, whether it be a 5-minute power nap, or sitting on the side of the road and closing your eyes for 5 minutes, breathing, meditation, exercise. There's so many different variations that I think it's important that you understand that it's okay to not be okay, but then at the same time, you need to accept that. Because I don't think everybody does. And I think a lot of people know that it's okay to not be okay, but it's everybody else. It's not you. It's not me. So it's important to accept that it can happen to you. You can have, you can have a crappy day, or you could suffer from a mental illness, and that's perfectly fine. They're two different things, but they're perfectly fine, and that's okay. So again, the stigma, and I think at the college, with us and the athletic staff, I think we've kind of put that at the front of our, our goals and our awareness, if you will. And I think a lot of other institutions are starting to do the same if they haven't already. So again, it's okay to reach out to your coach and say, Coach, I'm having a really bad day because of this, or, talking to your teammate, hey, it's okay, or, that you feel that way, or I'm having a really crappy day because X, Y, and Z. So be transparent with yourself, be transparent with your coaches, be transparent with your teammates, and then check in on your teammates, check in on your coaches, check in on your family members, your teachers, whoever it may be, because at the end of the day, a lot of people ask themselves, like, am I okay? But you don't ask other people. And kind of like Kelly said was, Robin Williams was all smiles. He made people smile every day. That was his profession, but nobody knew deep down that he wasn't. And so it's, it's one of those, it's a silent killer. Mental health is a silent killer because you don't see it. It's not like a broken bone where I can see that your arm is in 5 different directions. Okay. Mental health is completely different. So check in on your family members, check in on your teammates. If you're at practice and one of your teammates doesn't make a play that they normally make on a routine basis, and they throw a fit because of it, it might not because they're frustrated because they didn't make the play, but they might be going through some stuff mentally. So check in on them. Just ask, are you okay? I think that's a really big component to mental health that a lot of people overlook.
All right, so I'm going to just kind of wrap this up. I want to thank our speakers, Dr. Barron and Austin, for leading a terrific conversation on mental and physical health. For anyone who wants additional resources, feel free to reach out to your athletic directors on campus. They can connect you with additional resources on campus. I'm also just going to pull up this slide and leave that there for anybody who wants to, take a screenshot of those additional, student resources. But definitely thank you. And then we will send you an update on the next EPAC Leadership Series, which will be in the spring semester. So be safe, and we will see you then.